If I told you, if I told you just half of everything I've always wanted to.
Welcome back, Camille, to another Tea Time with Cam. It has been too long. I don't know, I've just been vlogging a lot, and it's been a while since we've sat down and had a more serious chat. But I love our little chats and our tea time. Today I have a chai, what is this? A vanilla almond chai. Today I want to talk about what it's like dating as a single mom. I don't have a ton of experience with this. I've been in one relationship since becoming a single mom, and at no point have I ever been actively dating, putting myself out there, going on dates, trying to find someone. But that one relationship I did have as a single mom definitely taught me a lot about how I want to go about it moving forward. At the time, while I was experiencing that, it was a very new experience. It was uncharted territory for me. So like I said, when I met him, I wasn't looking for someone. It's one of those things that just kind of happened, and we both agreed and still agree after the fact that the universe was pulling us together. We were meant to be in each other's lives during that time. Despite all logic, it just felt very right. And I think there's a good reason for that, because like I said, I learned so much, not just about dating as a single mom, but dating in general. Prior to that, I had been in a 5-year relationship that I started when I was 14. So building the foundation of a relationship as an adult versus as a child is life experience that I'm really glad I have now. And I'm glad I experienced that with the person that I did. I don't think there could have been a better person for me to learn those lessons with. So right off the bat, he knew I had kids. He kind of knew about me, heard about me before I really got to know him myself. So that wasn't a conversation we ever really had of me being like, oh, by the way, I have 2 kids. Moving forward, that's most likely a conversation I will have to have at some point when dating again, whenever that happens. Which it's how do you bring that up? How do you drop that on someone? It's a lot. In my opinion, I think it's definitely better to tell someone that you're a parent sooner than later. I don't think it should be your opener or on your dating profile for a lot of reasons. One of those being that narcissistic people with bad intentions will seek out vulnerable people. And if you kind of market yourself as a single mom, you're a vulnerable person. You're in a vulnerable situation raising children by yourself. And so you don't want to attract people who just see that vulnerability right away. I think that's a very easy way to end up getting manipulated by someone. But yeah, initially getting to know him, we talked about my kids, obviously. There was a solid month-long, platonic getting to know you type of phase. And in that, I just talked about my experience with parenthood and my kids, just what our family is like, what their personalities are like. And right off the bat, I think you can tell a lot about a person based off their reaction to that. If you start talking about your kids and someone's giving you weird vibes right away, not a good sign. So I think as a single mom, it's really important at the beginning to kind of test the waters in little ways, almost scoping out any red flags that you can. If you start talking to someone and you just get this feeling that it's not someone you'd want to bring around your kids, immediately goodbye. Especially being a younger mom, it is really hard to be in this phase of life while having kids. I hear a lot of people, especially single moms, talking about dating to marry, getting into relationships with intent to marry that person, and the second you know that they're not the one, immediately cutting it off. But having been married at the age of 18, my perspective of marriage definitely has shifted, and I don't really believe in dating to marry, which, coming from a single mom, I feel like is kind of controversial. Why would you have someone in your life if it's not gonna be a long-term step parent type of situation? But I really see the value in having relationships that don't work out. Relationships where you learn about yourself, you learn about what you do want and what you don't want and what you're not willing to accept from someone. And if you cut things off before you get the chance to really figure those things out with this kind of all or nothing mentality, I just feel like that doesn't leave a lot of room for growth and self-discovery. So I really believe in just trusting your intuition. There was definitely a point in my last relationship where I realized, yeah, I'm probably not gonna marry this person. I don't think we're gonna be together forever, but I still feel like we have lessons to teach each other, and it would feel wrong to cut it off at this point. I no longer had the mentality of I'm gonna fight for forever with this person, and not being in that mindset allowed for so much growth. In the time between realizing they're not my person and the inevitable breakup, we both learned so many valuable lessons. And having learned those lessons, I feel has brought me closer to being able to find my person. But having that kind of approach towards dating and having kids, it really doesn't mix. It's not ideal. It makes things pretty tricky. The last thing I want for my daughters is to be bringing people in and out of their lives, especially when I know that that person isn't going to be around for long. And that is one of the lessons that I'm very grateful that I learned in my last relationship, is not to bring them around my kids so early on. However, I do think it's important to know the difference between bringing someone around my kids and introducing them versus having them in my kids' lives. After kind of gauging, how do they feel about me having kids? How do they react to me talking about my kids? I was definitely hopeful, and he seemed very excited to potentially meet them. It was new for both of us, so neither of us really knew what to expect or how to go about that. And dating as a mother, one of the biggest deal breakers is, do you vibe with my kids? Regardless of if I'm dating to marry this person or not, I don't even want to give someone the light of day if there's weird vibes with them and my kids. Because if they can't respect them, listen to them, engage with them, treat them as humans, if someone gets around them and just kind of like disregards them, doesn't really have an interest in engaging, that just says a lot about who they are. And at the end of the day, if you don't get along with my kids, you don't get along with me. They are an extension of who I am. So getting into any kind of relationship, I think it is important to see how someone would interact with them. I think where I went wrong in my last relationship was after introducing him to my kids and then seeing that it went really well, I was like, oh, he gets along with them. This is awesome. We can all hang out and do stuff together, and I won't have to kind of divide my time between them, because for a while we were only hanging out when my kids weren't around. And as a single mom, there's not a lot of time that I get where my kids aren't around. And at the time, I was also really hopeful with this relationship. I did see a long-term future, and I was also figuring out how to be a single mom still, and grieving the idea of parenting with someone. And so pretty fast, he just kind of naturally became a part of our lives. There's times where I do feel really bad about the way it all played out. I was very naive. Knowing what I know now, I don't think I would have done it the same way, but I don't regret it. I think there was a lot to gain from that experience. After Landon passed away, I felt that nobody could love my kids half as much as I do. Don't get me wrong, I know my kids are awesome, and it's like, who couldn't love them? But for someone to love my kids in the same way that a parent does, not just to impress me or win me over, to truly love them because they love them. I just couldn't fathom that someone could enter our lives and feel that way about them. But to see somebody love my kids in the way that he did, he was always looking out for them. In every scenario, he put them first. Above me, above himself, they were always the top priority. He inspired me to be the best parent I could be in a time where I was really struggling with motherhood. And so to now know that someone is capable of that, my standards for a partner are way higher. If they don't love my kids as much as that, I don't want it. And for them to have someone like that in their lives, even though they no longer have that, I am glad that they had that connection while they had it. Who doesn't want their kids to feel loved? Especially after what my kids have gone through. But when we broke up, it was really hard for them. He had been a part of their lives for some time now. They saw him several times a week. He came over for dinner, helped me tuck them in, put them to bed. They had definitely gotten used to having him around. And so after we had spent hours doing the whole breakup thing, we went together to talk to Colette and explained to her that she had to say goodbye to him. And I think we both recognized it was really important for her to have that goodbye, especially being that she lost her father and he was there and then he wasn't, and she never got to say goodbye to him. To have another man come into her life and then disappear in the same way, I think that would have really messed her up. So we sat her down and explained that Cameron wasn't going to be coming around anymore, and it was definitely really hard to explain that to her. And I don't think she really took it seriously and believed us. She was just kind of like, oh, okay. I made it a point to explain to her that he is not dead. He is gonna continue to live his life just at his own house and not coming over here anymore. And since then, she has seen him a few times. There's been a few outings with groups of people that he's been in where we've met up with friends in a public place and he's seen them and talked to them. And I think it was an important reminder to them and almost proof that he is in fact still here. I just didn't want her to be confused and think that he had also died like her dad did. In the situation that we were in with the breakup, I feel like we handled that aspect of it the best we could. But, we didn't really know what we were doing. It's kind of a really hard situation to handle. But like I said, I'm glad it was with him, and I'm glad I know what I know now moving forward. And so when I start dating again, I definitely won't be making the same mistakes. Obviously, at the beginning, keeping my relationship completely separate from my kids, only hanging out when they're not around, and not even mentioning it to my kids whatsoever. There's no reason for them to know what mommy does when they're asleep, And I think after a few months, when things kind of start picking up, becoming more serious, I find that 3 months into a connection with someone is usually a time period where you're kind of determining, is this worth pursuing any further? It's kind of a make or break time period. And so if things are going well at that point, and I foresee things going quite a bit further with that person, I really trust them. It's not that I see us getting married quite yet, but I see us carrying out a long-term relationship. This isn't just going to be a fling. They're interested in being in my life. I'm interested in being in their life. I think at that point, I'd introduce them to my kids just to have them meet, and introducing them as a friend. I have a lot of friends that come around my kids. We hang out, we do stuff. They know that they're just my friends. So it's really not out of the ordinary for them to meet a friend of mine, and just seeing how that goes. Like I said, making sure that they're respectful, considerate, caring. And then after that point, if they kind of pass that test, taking a big step back, at least in regards to their relationship with my kids. They've met, I can tell it's good vibes. but not immediately inviting them into my kids' lives. No sleepovers, no waking up in the morning with us to have breakfast. Occasionally hanging out, all of us, just as I do with my friends, going and meeting up somewhere, but having very clear boundaries there and kind of letting them slowly get familiar with this person and very slowly building familiarity and some kind of a connection. And while that's happening, really paying close attention and observing how those interactions are going. And at some point later down the line, months later, I can't really put any specific time period on that. I'm a very intuitive person and I follow my intuition with caution, of course. But after a substantial amount of time just kind of hanging out here and there, I think at a certain point I would explain to my kids the nature of my relationship with that person, sitting them down and telling them, this is my boyfriend or this is my girlfriend. And I'm sure by the time that does end up happening, my kids will be quite a bit older and kind of understand what that means a little more. Because at this point, I think Colette would be like, what? And Delilah wouldn't even know what we're talking about. And at that point, kind of slowly letting my kids see more and more into our relationship, seeing us show affection to each other, just seeing us be a couple. And then just kind of taking it from there, still very slowly and cautiously and aware of their feelings, putting my kids and their needs and their feelings always at the center of my relationship. My parenting philosophy has always been to not shelter them from the world and the hurt that's out there and the pain and the love and the feelings. My job is to prepare them to go out and be able to handle those things on their own, because they will one day go out and experience love and then experience loss. That is a part of being human. I'm their role model. I lead by example in every little thing that I do. And so to see their mom experience love and experience loss, I don't think that's something that I want to hide from them. Just as I don't hide my grief from them. So many parents hide all of their feelings from their kids. They never want their kids to see them cry. They never want their kids to see them as anything other than happy, which I get that, and I hope for the most part my kids see their mom as happy. But it's so important for your kids to see you be emotional, to feel raw human emotion, and to see how you handle that, to see how you come back from that, to see you break down, to see you cry, and then to see you take some deep breaths and bring yourself back to center and talk to them about it and explain what happened and explain what you're feeling. That's the example I want to set for my kids. All this talk of dating in the future and how that's going to impact my kids, it's all very hypothetical. It might be 10 years before I even find someone worth bringing around. My standards are very high because they need to be, and there's not a lot of people, especially in my age range, willing to be what I would need them to be. But going through what I went through in my last relationship, I now trust myself that I will do everything I can to protect their little hearts from getting hurt. The last thing I will ever allow to happen is for them to constantly have people coming in and out of their lives, to be building connections with people I'm dating just to be abandoned by them time and time again. I will not allow that to happen, especially with the loss that they've already experienced in their short little lives. They will always be the number one priority, and my feelings and my want for a connection and a partner will never transcend that. So yeah, it's an incredibly difficult position to be in, but I know that I will always do what's best for them. And as long as that's the case, I know I'll be able to figure it out. At this point in time, I'm not too interested in dating. Definitely not where my priorities lie, especially with having all this in mind. I think the next time I find myself in a relationship, it will be because fate has brought someone into my life. Similarly to how it happened last time. I wasn't looking and there he was. I truly think if someone is meant to be in my life, they'll find their way. So I really have no interest in seeking someone out. At this point in time, I'm just interested in putting myself out there and creating friendships and connections, building a community of people around me and my daughters. And if one of those connections ends up being more of a romantic one, then that'll be that, and we'll go from there. Currently, I have very little interest in dating men. I've identified as queer since I was 14, but have only ever dated men and have really only had like 3 serious relationships, all with rather feminine men. And so I really haven't had the chance to explore my sexuality. I can confidently say that I could see myself with a woman. Honestly, at this point, more than I could see myself with a man. And so by the time I do start dating again, I think it will be a whole different experience for me. But yeah, I can pretty confidently say my next relationship will not be with a man. I'm just not going down that road again. I don't know. I'm really confused in my sexuality right now, which is why I think it's really important for me to explore that. And maybe I'll come to a different conclusion and realize that I wasn't meant to be dating men all along, or maybe I'll just conclude that I'm bi. I think introducing my kids to a girlfriend rather than a boyfriend would be a different experience for all of us, being that they definitely have daddy issues, and I think having a woman enter their lives, it wouldn't have the same weight to it. I think it's something that you see in movies a lot. A kid loses their parent and then their other parent starts dating again and they're like, "You're not my dad and you're never gonna be. Mom, stop trying to replace him." And it's this dynamic you see played out a lot. And I think if they had any feelings of mom is trying to replace dad, having a potential stepmom, those feelings might not be as prevalent. It'd be more like bonus mom. But yeah, we're talking years down the line here. For now, it's just me and my girls, and I'm trying not to take that time for granted. I really do love it just being the 3 of us for now. I don't know why, but I'm just imagining my future girlfriend and I like watching this video together and looking back and being like, oh, I had no idea what was to come. And I really don't, but I know that while being in my life is complicated and a tall order, me and my girls are freaking awesome and worth it. And whoever ends up in that position is freaking lucky to be there. I find myself sitting there every day just being like, God, these kids are so amazing and I'm so lucky to be their mom. And if someone doesn't feel that same way about having us in their lives, they're not worth a second of our time. Knowing my value is such a blessing and a curse, because I know I'm not gonna put up with any BS, but I know that means I'm going to be single for probably a really long time. But I've accepted that and I'm strapping in. Single parenthood, here we go. Whether we have someone in our lives or not, I know our future is gonna be so great. We just have so much ahead of us. That's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, Camily.